A pleasant good afternoon, viewers. My name is Javon Wilson, coming to you live out of 284 Media, of course, here in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. Now, with the 2021-2022 school year set to reopen shortly, many questions arise about the state of the schools, the practicality of the shift system, and of course, salary. The meager salaries that teachers are being paid. Now, with some 31 teachers now leaving the system, residents are duly worried about the state of education in our territory. Viewers, we dive right into the conversation with the Minister of Education, Culture, Agriculture, Fisheries, Youth and Sports, Dr. the Honorable Natalio D Wheatley, right after this commercial break. In addition to that, many other topics under his portfolio. So stick with us.
You value traditions.
Today,
You value music. You value education. Family.
I love you.
Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love. Life. At Popular, we're committed to you and everything our community values. For the things you value the most, count on us. Popular.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 Media. Now, as promised, we are joined in studio once again by Dr. the Honorable Natalio D Wheatley under his portfolio of Education, Culture, Agriculture, Fisheries, Youth and Sports and Youth Affairs. Welcome back to 284 Media, Dr. Wheatley.
Javon, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here on 284 Media.
All right, you're welcome, and we're going to dive straight into it. Now, I know in a recent House of Assembly, you made quite a heavy revelation, Minister. 31 teachers have now indicated that they will not be returning to the classroom. And, you know, I know that we would have had some vacancies even prior to that, but I know with this number, it increases to 47, and that's a significant number. I want to speak to, from your seat as Minister, based on what you've been able to observe, how exactly did we get here?
Thank you for the question. Actually, it's a question that I really needed to clarify. Persons may not know because, of course, in the media, social media age that we're living in now, persons are getting more information, and sometimes they're not getting the full picture when they get the information. The turnover that we have in the school system is nothing new. It's something that takes place all the time, and it happens all over the world. You have persons in the school system every year who retire. You have persons in the school system who go on maternity leave. They go on leave to study their education. Some persons in the education system change their career. And every year, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Agriculture, Fisheries, Youth Affairs, and Sports goes through the exercise of filling vacancies. This is done by the Teaching Service Commission. As we've spoken about before, hiring is something that's traditionally under the public service. In this case, the Constitution appointed the Teaching Service Commission, who's able to do that function on behalf of the governor and the deputy governor. So they have a pick on TSC, Cabinet has a pick on TSC, and the Teachers Union has a pick on TSC. And they're the ones who do the interviews, and they're the ones who do the hiring. And it's a common practice for this to be done every year. In this instance, it's just been broadcast as a breaking news story, but it's really customary.
So you're saying the number 31 isn't a need or an area for concern, and you're saying this is a regular occurrence. And I want to put some more emphasis on that number in particular. Is this what we have been seeing over the years, as high as a number as this? And does this cause need for worry as we head into a new term, especially considering the challenges that we would have had over the last 18 months with COVID-19?
Well, in terms of the exact number, we can look at past years and see what the numbers were to see if there's any difference. But it's my understanding that we always have to find quite a number of teachers to fill vacancies for various reasons. And one of the things we're doing to help to alleviate the concerns as it pertains to hiring, we have so many opportunities in the teaching profession for persons to become teachers. But we are relaunching our teacher education program at the H. Lavity Stout Community College. It was stopped some years ago under the previous administration. And we see teacher training as something that's incredibly significant to be able to fill these vacancies, because of course a lot of the vacancies are advertised in the region and overseas, and persons have to come into the territory to get the positions. So we want to have a dedicated workforce that can fill these positions where there's openings. And I would like to encourage persons out there that teaching, despite what you may have heard, teaching is a very satisfying profession. And certainly it's something that persons out there should consider, especially in the environment that we have now, where it's so difficult to get jobs.
Thank you so much. Now, I know that your ministry may or may not have received a lot of these resignation letters. What would you say, based on what you've been able to review, would be the core reason communicated by those persons leaving as to why they are leaving?
Let me just clarify. Not all of them are resignation letters. Some persons are simply on leave. Some of them are retired, some of them on maternity leave, some of them on different types of leave, and some persons may have just switched their career. So to be able to delve deeper into some of the reasons, we would have to look at each individual case. And certainly that's research that I can do. But this is nothing different than what happens every year in the school system.
Okay. In recent times, we've been having the conversation about salary. It's really, it has been at the forefront. I myself would have gotten certain comments from you regarding, in particular, salary. And I want to ask, based on your knowledge, what is the average pay scale teachers are being given at this time in the territory? If you could just give us an estimation.
I'm not in a position to give you an estimate on what the average salary is. Mm-hmm. What I can say to you is that I came into the teaching profession back in 1996, and I would have been at the very bottom of the scale just coming out of high school. So I know what teachers are paid, and I know it's a system that we have that will pay you more the longer you are in the system. And we've even had discussions about seeing how we can remove teachers and the education system out of the overall government system and have a new type of compensation that will be based on performance, much more so than years served. But the system as we know it right now is under the general public service. And of course, back in, I believe it's the early 2000s, the Virgin Islands Party administration at that time did a salary review. Javon, unfortunately, persons promote a lot of misinformation. Some persons say, oh, every year they do salary reviews, as though the salary review is just a way to shut persons up, but that's not true. The last salary review was done, I think, somewhere around 2002. And that resulted in
That's at least 20 years ago.
About 20 years ago, and that resulted in some increases for our teachers. So we had quite a lot of time between then and now, and this administration decided that it was important to do another salary review. I know you had the governor on this program, I believe it was last week. Mm-hmm. And the governor did not share all the information that could help educate the public. This is the process that you have to take. You have to go through to get increases to salaries in the public service. The first thing you do is that cabinet has to commission a salary review. And that is being conducted by the deputy governor. And he would have to be able to speak about where he is in the process of the salary review. But once the exercise is complete, certainly it would come back to cabinet, and cabinet would have to make decisions as to whether they accept the recommendations of the salary review and find money to be able to compensate the teachers. So the governor missed a crucial component of educating the public, which is the salary review, which is supposed to be ongoing now because we made this decision way back in January of 2021, even before the present outcry that we have now. And I have to remind the public that this salary review, that in the cabinet meeting, I asked for special consideration be given to teachers. And I believe that teachers should make more money than they make right now. I am an advocate for the teachers. I'm fighting with them to see how we can get them better salaries.
Now, you mentioned cabinet made an official decision, of course, and recommendation for salary review that was submitted to the deputy governor's office. I want to speak about a realistic expectation as it relates to the timeline that this will take. I know you said just 20 years ago the last one was done, but persons are really angry about, especially since recently a local teacher took to social media to explicitly express the amount that she's making even after she would have achieved a master's level certification. And mind you, this is a thread that went viral because so many teachers share that sentiment, share that reality. Like you mentioned, I spoke to the governor and he explicitly said as well, he said, listen, yes, this falls under my portfolio, but I don't deal with the budget. The government handles the budget. You're saying that they have to do that review in order for it to come back to the government to be approved and budgeted for. But realistically, what timeline are we, looking at as it relates to how long this will take and, how soon we can move forward in this process?
Well, that question would be for the governor, the deputy governor, and their team. And Jovan, what we have to prevent is just seeming like we're shifting responsibility and shifting blame. And that's why I thought it was unfortunate that all the information was not presented to the public. This is the process. I'm not sure if persons, whether they have doubt in their minds or they believe it or not, you cannot just change teachers' salary. The process is you have a salary review. Cabinet decides on that. The person that conducts, the institution that supervises the salary review is the deputy governor's office, and this is a part of the governor's responsibility for the public service. When the salary review was done the last time, it was done by KPMG out of Jamaica, so a company was hired to be able to do the salary review. Now the governor and the deputy governor have to come to the public and give them some information about this ongoing salary review. And this is something that should involve the teachers' union as well. They should be heavily involved in this process, and I have all confidence that they will come to the public and share this vital piece of information. And once they have to say how long it's going to take, and then once they bring it back to cabinet, then we have a job to do. And I'm committed to doing that job on behalf of the teachers, on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands. I'm going to fight hard to see our teachers get increases. But this is just the process, and the public has to be educated, has to be informed about the affairs of government.
Absolutely. And now you just mentioned the teachers union. They have been, I guess, they're being held accountable as well. But even so, we saw them recently launching a petition to get signatures regarding the challenges of the teaching fraternity. And they highlighted quite a myriad of challenges, none that are new to us, of course. You did mention initially as well that you would have met with the union executive. Did I understand you correctly? Did you meet with the union executive? And if you did, what came out of that meeting? And where are we as it relates to coming to some form of resolve as it relates to these challenges?
Thank you, Jovan. And I just want to make it very clear that I am a regular attendee at teachers' union meetings.
Okay.
I've been invited on a number of occasions to give updates. And in the past, the teachers' unions, for instance, told me about challenges with mold, for instance. As a result of the meeting that I had with the teachers' union, We signed contracts in excess of $300,000 to rectify problems with roofing in schools. For instance, Ebenezer Thomas Primary School, we did some work on the roof there. We did some work on Alexandrina Maduro Primary School's roof. We did some work on Ivan Dawson's roof. And we had about 6 contracts that we signed to fix some major problems in the schools. Ivan Dawson now is about to be opened as a result of the work that we did to repair the problem in Ivan Dawson's roof. And we did a thorough mold cleaning at Ivan Dawson. We did a thorough mold cleaning at Alexandrina Maduro Primary School. And we have scheduled, we did also a contract to repair the roof at Leonora Delville Primary School, and we did mold cleaning there, and we're going to do some more mold cleaning there. So the point I'm trying to get across to you is meeting with the teachers union is nothing new. But certainly when I heard about this petition, I immediately contacted the president of the teachers union. She subsequently sent me a letter so I could understand their concerns. And I scheduled a meeting with them immediately, being very responsive to their concerns. They presented the concerns to me. We had I would say, a very good exchange, and we were able to come to some great understandings. They had some demands that they put on the table, and I was also able to explain what we were already doing to satisfy some of the things that they were concerned about. For instance, there were some concerns about their working conditions as teachers. And as a result of a meeting I had with some teachers at Elmer Stout High School some months ago, we decided we had to remove our teachers from the Clarence Thomas building at Passer Estate. We just had to get them out of there. And I've gone to the Minister of Finance, and we've met with the Recovery and Development Agency, the Ministry of Finance, and the Projects Office to put a plan together to get those young persons and those teachers out of the CTL building. And we're going through the process. We've had some expressions of interest, and we're going to basically start the tender process now. So we have been responsive. The teachers also have concern about the salary. Of course, I was able to explain to them about the salary review, and they have some other concerns as well in terms of monetary concerns that they have. And I'm scheduling a meeting with the Minister of Finance with them, and I believe they also would like to meet with the Deputy Governor, as some of their concerns fall under his portfolio. We had a very good meeting, and I expect results as a result of this meeting.
All right, now I want to dive into some of the concerns that, is shared between the teaching body in this territory. I know one of the prime concern is having to dig into their personal pockets, their personal finances. And, this is an age-old issue to sponsor, to pay for student supplies. So I want to speak to what the budgets look like for schools, because in the interim of us raising compensation for our teachers, we really want to think about how else we can help our students. How can we supplement and help with some of the issues that are inside the schools? So can you speak to those budgets and what sort of money is allocated to schools?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the concerns that the teachers union presented that we wanted to be able to address. And I'm also working with the Ministry of Finance to see that we can have some more funding for some of the resources in the schools, because that's a real complaint teachers have about having to dig into their own pockets. And that's a challenge I would like to solve for the teachers. But as it pertains to budgeting, persons may not know. They can go on the Google, they can go on the internet, and they can search for the budget of the Virgin Islands. You could search for the budget estimates for 2021 and every year before. That's online, and you'll be able to see yourself exactly was budgeted for education. Education takes up about right now about 14, just under 14% of the budget. The only ministry that's above that is natural resources, labor, and immigration. And that has to be explained because really education is the area of the budget that gets the most money. The only reason natural resources and labor and immigration is just slightly above it is because the national health insurance has gone under the natural resources, labor, and immigration, and they get a huge, they make a huge payout to the Health Services Authority, which is used to really, government used to give a subvention to the Health Services Authority, but now they're given, NHI is given a payout to the Health Services Authority. And because of the quantity of millions, it takes their budget estimate above education. But if you take away the national health insurance, by far, education gets the biggest slice of the budget. So education is prioritized. But I must say here that education needs more money. And that's why we need to make more money as a territory. And certainly, of course, we need to find savings in our budget so we can put more of the savings towards education, which always has great needs. But we also need to bring in more revenue. And that's why you see the government seeking new initiatives to bring in revenue. And some of those initiatives have been frustrated, actually, by the United Kingdom. I'm speaking specifically about the medicinal cannabis issue that's been frustrated by the United Kingdom, despite what you may have been told. And other initiatives, I'm
Can we pause there for a quick second? You said based on what we have been told regarding the marijuana legislation, and not to divulge too much, because I know that the marijuana legislation, being that, medicinal marijuana that is, being that even though it falls under the agriculture portfolio, has been moved under the Minister of Finance's portfolio because it is a revenue generator. We were told in particular that a licensing authority is the only thing standing in between it. Would you say that you share that same view?
No, I don't share that same view, but this is something that the Premier's office is engaging with the United Kingdom with. So I don't want to say too much about it, but just to say that we have legislation on our books right now that will allow us to legalize medicinal cannabis without even seeking assent from the governor's office. We did new legislation because, of course, there were some aspects of it that were a bit cumbersome. So we created new legislation, and that legislation has not been assented to by the governor. And of course, the foreign secretary has even gotten involved, Dominique Raab. But I believe that they should allow the medicinal cannabis industry to move forward. I believe that they shouldn't try to control it in the way or try to replicate what they do in the United Kingdom. The laws have been, I should say, the international conventions have placed marijuana into a different schedule, a least restrictive schedule, and the medical benefits of marijuana have been understood and realized, and those things are contained within the legislation that we put forward. We put forward adequate controls in the legislation to control the industry, to protect children, to protect other persons. And it's just for the governor to assent to the legislation. He and I have a difference of opinion on it. But this is something that's in negotiation, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Regarding, I know you mentioned initially that, the numbers that we've seen with the teachers leaving recently, that number 31 is not nothing new, but I have to, you said it's a recurrent reality, but in this current climate, we're challenged with COVID-19, and not just that. If we are to date back to the atrocities of 2017 hurricanes Irma and Maria, our children have been displaced. I think we both can agree they have been working in deplorable conditions. They've been working at a disadvantage. So I have to ask, based on the numbers of teachers that are leaving, especially now in this critical time, do you think that, not mandating, but pushing teachers to take vaccine, encouraging them to take the vaccine, has that been, do you think that's one of the main reasons why teachers might be leaving the profession?
Well, again, I'm glad for the opportunity to clarify. No one has sought to force teachers to take a vaccine. As a government, we took the position that we're going to do it through education. We're going to share as much information as possible. And I'm not sure quite why there's this recurring theme that government is going to mandate someone to take a vaccine. I certainly don't believe it on a personal level, because this is persons' bodies, and persons must make their own choices about what they do with their bodies. We encourage persons to take the vaccine because, as we saw in this outbreak that we recently have, and let me just give my sincere condolences to any persons out there who lost loved ones. But as we saw in this recent outbreak, those persons who were unvaccinated, those persons who had underlying conditions, those persons who perhaps maybe they had diabetes, obesity, etc., they were particularly vulnerable, and quite a number of persons died. I think that's clear for persons to see. Now we've confirmed that we have the Delta variant here in the territory, and persons must not play with this virus, because this virus can take you out. It can end your life, and then you won't have anyone to argue about whether to take it or not take it. So we're encouraging persons just because we're concerned about persons losing their lives. We don't want anyone to have to bury a family member anymore. Persons have to be responsible. They have to seek credible sources of information. We've tried our best to provide that. And persons have to make the responsible choice for themselves and their families. But we have not mandated it on anyone. So I would be very surprised if anyone left the teaching profession for that reason. And in fact, I highly doubt it.
I know in a previous interview, we touched on the fact that your ministry was gathering information based on a story that went out about mandating teachers to take the vaccine, or at least mandating them to be tested if they don't take the vaccine. You mentioned that your ministry was indeed trying to get a consensus of how many teachers were vaccinated so far. Can you speak to us about, based on those investigations, how many teachers are vaccinated, at least a percentage, how many persons are still hesitant? What is the feel like within the teaching body?
I thank you again for the opportunity to clarify. Let me just make it very clear. Cabinet, and we would have spoken about this before, Cabinet made a decision for the Deputy Governor and the Public Service in combination with the Health Emergency Operations Center to put in place a testing regime for public servants. Now, I'm sure this will change, but the Cabinet paper stated frontline workers would be the persons who would be considered for this testing regime if they were not willing to be vaccinated.
Okay.
I'm sure that's something that we'll have to return to. So, of course, separate and apart from this policy, we had a survey of persons who were vaccinated in the teaching service. And numbers were low. But after the spikes that we recently had, I know that we've had some teachers get vaccinated since then. And the Ministry of Education is again conducting a survey. In fact, we have a survey going out today to parents, but we'll survey as well teachers to see how many of our teachers are vaccinated. And this is important information for us to know because, of course, the levels of vaccinations we have in different areas can play a significant part in decisions that we make. For instance, the entire Cedar School staff is vaccinated, and even quite a number of their children have gone to St. Thomas to get vaccinated. And those things play a part. Let's say, for instance, if you're making decisions, let's say you have a COVID case and you have to make decisions. The fact that persons are immunized is a significant factor in any decision-making process. But any further information as it regards the testing regime of public servants, I would direct to the Deputy Governor.
Thank you so much. Now, I know a lot of parents are not very happy about the shift system that was announced, about that continuing, particularly at the high school. Can you speak to those concerns, please? And how long do you expect this to continue?
Well, I can't agree with you that many persons are unhappy with the shift system. I've gotten quite a number of persons who have basically applauded the decision because their child perhaps did not get any time on campus with their schoolmates. And some persons have recognized that the online schooling, while it was good for some students, disadvantaged other students. Maybe they had different challenges. Maybe some, they didn't have the appropriate supervision when they were doing the online schooling. Maybe instead of paying attention to their class, they were doing other things. Maybe they just had a difficult time learning through that method. Maybe they prefer the classroom environment, etc. So we recognize that online schooling was not good for all our children, even though some children actually thrived with it. But so we wanted to make sure that our children got some time in the classroom environment. Even half a day is better than no time at all for many of our students. I'll give my daughter as an example. My daughter was in 7th grade this past year, and she did the entire year online. She never met any of her classmates, and she was not on the campus. So she's never met her teachers in person. And it made me realize that, of course, you have your schoolwork. That's just one aspect of education. But there are other aspects of education. There's a social aspect to it as well. So I think that this is the best solution to keep our children safe and at the same time provide some instruction to persons who may have struggled with the online option. Now, I have to say we're doing a survey right now because I know there are some persons who are uncomfortable with returning to the school environment and perhaps maybe even have underlying issues, health concerns that would make them nervous about sending their children to school. So we're conducting a survey. I noticed that the survey went out today. Persons should try their best to fill out that survey, and that will give us more information for putting together any alternatives that need to be put in place for persons who face particular concerns.
I know you highlighted the fact that, yes, some of our students would have, been utilizing the hybrid system or the online system and really struggling with that. Of course, attributing that as one of the reasons why we're returning to school. And of course, kids wanting a normal school environment. But I want to speak to how long do you expect this to continue? Because the shift system was, a thing even prior to COVID-19. So realistically, what are we looking at as it relates to our students being able to return to school full time? Because the rest of the territory is going back to school full time. This just applies to the high school. So in particular to that, what would you say?
Well, yes, I'm grateful to be able to give persons updates as it pertains to that. As I mentioned before, we're building additional classrooms. We have to get the students out of the old Clarence Thomas building at Passer Estate. Our senior students will come over to the campus. But in addition to that, we're going to build additional classroom spaces for the junior school. and we anticipate that that process will not go past April of next year. In fact, I'm hoping for earlier than that, but April is the time that we've designated for that. The Recovery and Development Agency has received expressions of interest, and those persons selected from the expressions of interest will be able to tender on this particular project. So we expect for it to get going soon. Of course, these procurement processes are important. Sometimes they frustrate me because I would like to go a little more quickly than these procurement processes would allow me to, considering the condition that our teachers and our children have to work in. But we've been constrained by the processes which the Recovery and Development Agency have to go through, and of course, we want to abide by all of the tenets of good governance to ensure we go through all the proper processes. But I have to say to you, I sometimes get frustrated. I just want the money and I just want to contract somebody to build the school. But unfortunately, that's not the place we are. That's not where we are in the territory right now. We've decided that we want to go through these sometimes very lengthy procurement processes, and those can tend to slow things down.
Minister, I think that's a tune that we've heard even from the last administration, and I'm not here to knock what you're saying, but I do recall even when this current administration was campaigning, I remember one of the things the administration campaigned on was a better school environment for our students. There was a particular picture, this picture on the screen. It was very fundamental, I believe, in shifting people's perspectives on voting for this administration. I really want us to zero in on that learning environment. You did mention in a capsule that you're not happy about the state of the schools. But can you speak to, you said early next year, early 2022, when in particular can we expect the school to be completed by? And you also spoke to the processes that kind of restrict us, that slows us down. Where are we on the furnishings of the school in particular? I know that has been an issue that's on the table. How soon can our students get the requisite furniture to get back to a comfortable environment?
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought up the fact that the Virgin Islands Party campaigned on improving the schools, and that's certainly something we aim to deliver on. But one thing I know that we should not do is politicize education, have it as a political football that we kick back and forth between the different parties. I think that the National Democratic Party, the Virgin Islands Party, any other party, we should unite, just like we do on financial services issues. Let's unite that education is a top priority and give education everything that it requires, and let's help to fight against some of the bureaucratic processes that we have in education. Certainly, when I arrived in education, it was in a very poor state, and there are lots of problems to be solved, and they're not overnight problems, but certainly I'm committed to seeing it through. For instance, when I arrived in education, I met the children in that building at Passer Estate, and I didn't put them there, but I intend to take them out of that building. And that's a pledge to people. And I can pledge other things that we as an administration have done in education as well. We have the Eslin Henley Richer Learning Center right now in town and country planning for approval. And then we can go to the procurement process. We also have Jas Van Dyke Primary School. We're talking about a new school for Jas Van Dyke Primary School for ages. That as well is in town and country planning, and it has been approved. Eslin Henley Richer Learning Center has been approved. So we're going to have a public meeting at Jas Van Dyke very shortly, so we can get the communities go ahead, so we can go through the procurement process. And we have Isabella Morris. We're going to build a junior school there. We've been talking about junior schools forever. We are going to make it a reality. And I challenge anyone, Javon, to show me in a 2-year span more money spent in educational infrastructure. When we got into office, we immediately fixed what we call the L-shaped building. We renamed it Ella Dorothy Turnbull Building. That was close to $4 million. So we've been able to put our money where our mouths are. We have persons, of course, in the media and other places who are promoting, I would say, somewhat of a biased perception of the facts. And of course, we're in social media age. But when you line up what we've spent in education, what we will do before the completion of this 4-year term, you will see that we've basically backed up our talk as it pertains to education. And if persons are really honest and look at the facts, they'll agree with that.
All right, we have to move on. I want to speak to VID, VID. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Some parents are complaining that it's currently faulty and asking whether that they are expected to pay that $125 fee as we head into this new school term.
Okay, let me just address the furniture quickly, and then I can speak to the VIDs. Of course, as it pertains to the furniture, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. The furniture was procured after the hurricanes through a $65 million loan from the Caribbean Development Bank. I just spoke about the lengthy procurement processes that were led by the project's office out of the Ministry of Finance, who is the agency responsible for dealing with the $65 million loan. We went through the procurement process. We selected a local retailer. The Caribbean Development Bank rejected that proposal. We went through the whole process again. A company out of Trinidad was chosen. They, of course, had many delays because of COVID-19 lockdowns. Trinidad was under severe lockdowns, and that caused some delays. But we've already received one shipment of furniture. We should have received another shipment on Sunday. We have to confirm that because, of course, we had some weather in the region recently. And we have another shipment scheduled to arrive on August the 22nd. So that's some progress for the people, and that will allow us to seat more persons in the classrooms as opposed to be sitting around picnic tables. And as it relates to the VIDs, if persons have any concerns about their VIDs, just go to the 3rd floor of the ward building. That's right there where the education department sits, and the persons there will be able to answer any questions or concerns they might have about their digital devices.
But for now, they're still expected to pay that $125.
I think the best place they can get the answers to those questions is in the ministry.
Okay. All right. I think I want to speak to scholarships. How many scholarships were approved this year? National scholarships, that is, for this year?
We have an initial number of 30 students that we approved national scholarships for, but we're giving additional assistance to a further 22 persons. So that's a total of 52 persons who will be receiving funding to be able to accomplish their dreams, their hopes, and their aspirations. We have a policy, and I should speak to this, a national policy as it pertains to scholarships. We have to make some amendments to this policy, and that will allow us to be able to give more scholarships in the future. But I have to give credit to the Minister of Finance, who has provided additional means of income for scholarships for students. We have the money services tax. That's the Western Union and the MoneyGram money that leaves the BVI. We have a 7% tax on that, and about 20% of the taxed money goes to education, particularly to scholarships and also to educational infrastructure. And that's provided additional money to award these 52 persons with assistance to be able to go to school. And we're grateful for that.
Thank you so much. And how many persons applied this year?
We had, I'll have to go back and get the numbers in terms of how many applied, because some persons have their applications dismissed because they're missing information.
Okay.
So it would be more than the 52 persons, I believe. But
The reason I asked that question is because, we've heard reports that all of the persons who would have applied were approved, and there are persons concerned about whether, why do we have a scholarship committee if we're going to be approving all the persons who applied for the scholarship? So I wanted you to speak to that a little bit, if you can.
well, this is why I said to you that in terms of the National Scholars Program, it's about 30 students.
Okay.
And the additional 22 students will receive some level of assistance. And what persons should know, including the persons who may have asked you that particular question, is that government gives hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants every single year. Even persons who did not apply to the scholarship program, we give hundreds and thousands of dollars in grants. And that's something that we'll continue to do because we believe in being able to fulfill the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of our people. And if education is indeed the key to success, we should try our best to be able to get as many persons as possible assistance to be able to go to school. Now, not everybody's going to win a scholarship because most times, we've diversified how we look at scholarships. So it's not just about your academic performance, but academic performance is a real key in terms of who gets scholarships, and not everyone will be able to get a scholarship. So as a government, we try to help persons regardless of the fact that they may not be quote unquote a national scholar, like the 30 persons we've selected. We have to be able to provide assistance to persons who have passion, they have the inclination to return to the BVI and give back to the community.
Thank you so much. Now, I want to divulge a bit to partnerships with the region regarding education. I know in recent years you would have traveled to Guyana in particular, and you were in talks with the university down there to possibly have students from the BVI go over to Guyana and study. And clearly, we know that education, even in Guyana, is very, I should say, significantly cheaper than larger nations. So if you can, please, can you comment on those discussions and whether it's something still being considered by your ministry? Yes,
actually, I gave a grant actually for somebody to study. I think it might have been in Guyana or Trinidad. It's either Guyana or Trinidad. I tend to think it's Guyana. But I'm grateful for the question because at the college, H. Laverty Stout Community College, we put a committee together, agricultural committee. It's led by William Georges, who's an agricultural scientist, a retired agricultural scientist and current farmer, among a number of other stakeholders. And part of the remit of that committee is to make recommendations for short courses that we can offer persons who are going to get into farming. Also, they're going to provide training for the statutory body that we're going to bring on stream. But they also make recommendations for partnerships with colleges and universities in the region and internationally. Now, we've established a relationship with the University of Guyana, but we have partnerships with other places as well. I think we have University of Southampton, we have University of Kentucky, and there's some other universities that I'm not remembering the name of. We've established those relationships, and we're going to restart a degree program at H. Laverty Stout Community College so that they can transfer from H. Laverty Stout Community College to one of these schools either in the region or internationally. I believe University of Reading is one as well. So there's a number of schools with great interest in partnering with us, and we do indeed to take that forward. We do indeed intend to take that forward.
Thank you. Before we move off of education, one final question. Minister, we understand the constraints of COVID-19 and how that has affected so many persons across this territory. So many persons are on reduced salaries. Many persons are jobless as a result of the impact. And I know lots of parents are struggling with having to send, while they are happy for school reopening, finding uniforms and the supplies necessary to send the kids back to school. from your ministerial level, would you be able to say if there's any form of support, help, finance that is available to parents who find themselves in a vulnerable position as school reopens soon?
Yeah, it's indeed a difficult time in the territory as it pertains to finance. Certainly, persons can appeal through the existing means. You have social development department. Some persons get something from their district representative, of course. So there are various means, but I invite as well persons in the private sector to get involved as well, because sometimes the existing streams of revenue in government are not enough for all the persons who have needs. So I call on the different, whether it's the Rotary clubs and the Lions Club. I know persons do things on their own sometimes, of course, but those partnerships are particularly important and useful to be able to solve some of the social challenges that we see in the system right now.
Okay. All right. Agriculture and fisheries. A lot of our fishermen were affected by this pandemic, and we do know that a stimulus was given out to fisher folks and farmers, of course, but a lot of persons were not even, were not able to benefit from that, unfortunately. With that said, some folks are questioning whether or why consideration wasn't given to extending the lobster season for at least another month to give some of these fisher folks a means of surviving. And of course, this particular question came directly from a fisherman. So what would you say to that?
Well, you mentioned the fishermen and the farmer stimulus and said that many persons weren't able to benefit. I'm grateful there were many persons who did benefit from the stimulus for the fishers and farmers. And I've seen direct result of those funds helping out fishermen and farmers being able to upgrade their businesses. Remember, fishermen and farmers got very little assistance since the storms of 2017. Many persons had their boats destroyed, engines destroyed, etc. And some of the stimulus funds were able to help them get back on their feet. And we're grateful for that. And Cabinet recently approved a regime for monitoring and evaluation of these stimulus grants that certainly would be able to report and be more accountable in terms of how government funds were used for this particular program. As it pertains to the extension of the lobster season, I was directly asked by some fishermen about extending the lobster season. I spoke to my technocrats about it, persons in Ministry of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration, as well as my own ministry. They've recommended against extending the lobster season. I certainly want to be able to formally address those persons because I have a letter being prepared to send to those persons who requested for the lobster season to be extended. But we want to put something in place. I have a discussion in place going into the future because, of course, we have some concerns about the sustainability of our lobsters, and if we overfish and we don't allow closed seasons, it may hurt us in the future because of the sustainability. These closed seasons are done to help give the opportunity for all of these juvenile lobsters, etc., to be able to grow and to be able to multiply so we can have a stock of lobsters into the future. So if we look at things from a short-term basis, it may hurt us in the long run. But I would like to have more conversations with the persons who would like to see the lobster season be extended longer and see how in what other ways we can help them.
All right, as we begin to close out on a lighter note, I know you traveled to Tokyo recently. Of course, our BVI athletes live and in living color representing the British Virgin Islands and doing that so extremely well. So if you're able to just speak to the experience, what was that like for you being there, but also being around the athletes who we're so very proud of?
Well, it was a great experience going to the Tokyo Olympics, particularly to support our athletes. I went there at the invitation of the BVI Olympic Committee, and of course it was the possibility of having a BVI athlete medal for the very first time in the Olympics, which was a very significant achievement for us as a territory. My colleague, the Minister of Transportation, told me he recently traveled and he saw that a Puerto Rican athlete medaled, got a first gold medal in Puerto Rico's history, and they almost had a parade when the plane landed for that person, and they had media on the plane, and it was a big thing. So it would have been a very big thing for us to get a medal, and we had the talent to be able to do it. So it was something that was very exciting. Certainly, I only stayed in Tokyo 2 or 3 days, and my whole trip was centered around supporting the athletes. But Tokyo is a great city. The persons there were very hospitable, very nice. Tokyo is a very clean city, and certainly it's a place that can inspire us right here in the BVI in terms of being a tourist destination. But overall, I was very, very happy. It was a long time to get to Tokyo. It was a lot of hours flying. But I was very happy to be able to support our athletes. They did extremely well, and we expect them to take this experience and to use it in the future so that they can look forward to better and brighter things in the future and the possibility of even medaling at the next Olympic Games.
All right, and I know you spoke to the fact that, we didn't get that medal, but definitely still making history, a national record in particular for Mr. McMaster, and of course all the other athletes doing so well. So I have to put you on spot, Mr. Minister. What are we gifting our athletes with? I think this is a big deal. Certainly a big win, not just for the BVI, but also for the region. I know we are also in the practice of gifting and ensuring that their efforts are valued as they represent this territory. What does that look like this time around? And of course, I'm not asking you to break too many surprises here, but how are we supporting our athletes and all the work that they're putting into representation of the Virgin Islands?
Yeah, I thank you for asking that question, because a lot of persons perhaps who may not have not been paying attention saying, well, what did the government do to support the athletes? Or the government hasn't done anything to support the athletes, but they want to celebrate the athletes. Well, that's not true. And certainly the athletes would have come to myself, they would have come to the Premier in preparing for the Olympics and say they need a little additional support. They're getting some support from the BVI Olympic Committee. This is something that persons should know as well, that all the athletes were receiving assistance from BVI Olympic Committee. The athletes said the assistance we are getting, we're grateful for, but we need something additional. So through the Premier's office, we were able to provide $100,000 for the athletes in preparation for the Tokyo Olympics. But I recognize that that's not enough. So the Olympic Committee and I are scheduled to have a meeting so we can see how we can better support the elite athlete training program, that it's more consistent. The athletes know it's coming. They don't have to worry about how they're going to get their treatments, how they're going to pay their bills, pay their rent, etc. They'll have more peace of mind and security and able to focus on improving at their craft, which is athletics. And we look forward to being able to celebrate them in the future. And you spoke about gifting. I have to say to you that we have a policy as it pertains to athletes winning competitions. For instance, I think if somebody won a gold medal at the Olympics, they probably would have been given somewhere around $60,000, something like that. So there's a policy in place on it, and as you may know,
$60,000 locally.
Yeah, somewhere around there, they would have gotten about $65,000, something like that, for winning a gold medal at the Olympics. But also, you may have known in the past when Chantel Malone got a gold medal at the Pan Am Games, she got an award of some land. So even in addition to the monetary award, there's possibilities of getting other types of awards when they win. But I'm grateful to all the persons who came out for the motorcade and showed love to our athletes. I also have to recognize Adeja Hodge, who just really cleaned up at the Junior Olympics, which were held in the United States.
Yes.
And she's an up-and-coming athlete that we all have to keep our eyes on.
Absolutely. And talking about ambassadors as we close out, our very own Sophia Ruben also made history by, of course, coveting the first international title for our territory. Of course, Mrs. Curvey Globe. She's a great ambassador. She's been doing amazing things. But, Minister, I still don't think a lot of persons understand. I believe they underestimate what kind of win that was for us as a territory. So, in closing, how do you feel about her representation?
I mean, that's just tremendous news, and we should all celebrate her. In fact, Giovanna, I have to say to the persons out there in the public, I'm concerned about the level of it's no other way to put it, but hatred in our community. We don't encourage each other. We don't, celebrate each other's successes. We're very critical of each other. We have lots of bad things to say about each other. I think every single person in the BVI should be extremely happy that Sophia Ruben went to California, competed against persons from Russia, Australia, the United States of America, all these different places in the world. And BVI, with its population of just over 30,000 persons, came out on top. And this would represent our very first international crown. We've had persons win crowns in the region, like Miss Caribbean, I think it's Miss Caribbean World. We've had pageants like that. My mom, for instance, she went to the University of West Indies in Cave Hill, and she won Miss University of the West Indies.
Wow.
We've had persons who've done well in pageants all over the world. But this would represent our first crown competing internationally.
Yes.
And some persons may say, okay, this pageant is not on the scale of a Miss Universe or something like that. It does not matter. It was a pageant. It's a credible pageant. It's our people did well. We need to celebrate their success and be happy for them. And I'm extremely overjoyed at Sophie B's accomplishments in this area.
Thank you so much.
And I must say, before I close, I'm sorry about that. I have to congratulate Win BVI. I neglected to say that in the House of Assembly, and I was disappointed that I forgot it, because Miss Alicia Green, she got Director of the Year for Win BVI. That's something that she should be celebrated for.
Yes.
And I've witnessed the work of Win BVI right here in the BVI, and they're doing excellent work, not only with preparing for pageants, but supporting women in need.
Absolutely.
And I believe Win BVI needs to be bigged up for all they're doing in the BVI, and I encourage them to continue.
And I completely agree with those sentiments. When BVI is definitely making a difference in the lives of women, especially those who find themselves in a vulnerable position. I'm going to give you the opportunity to close out, Minister. I think we've covered quite a myriad of topics, very important concerns, issues. But I want to give you a chance to close out in a nutshell. How do you feel where we are as a territory, and how hopeful you are about us moving forward in a positive direction?
We had a difficult time in our territory, no doubt about it. I would say this must be the most difficult time for the BVI in its modern history, based on what we've gone through with the hurricanes of 2017 and now the COVID-19 pandemic. But we are strong people. We've been through difficult times before. We draw on the strength of our ancestors to be able to get through these times. And we cannot get through these times being divided and having the amount of hatred I see in the community. We need more love. Let's leave politics for when the campaigning starts. We need more love in our community. We need to unite, come together, and build a better territory for all of us. We may not always agree, but we should always treat our neighbor as we'd want our neighbor to treat us, and we should always show love to each other. And
that is certainly a beautiful note to end on. Viewers, this is the Minister for Education, Culture, Agriculture, Fisheries, Sports, and Youth Affairs, Dr. the Honorable Natalio D Wheatley. Of course, so happy to have this opportunity to sit down with him to discuss many topics that falls under his various portfolios as minister. Viewers, that is all the content we have for this interview, but certainly it continues this evening at 6 p.m. as my colleagues Kamal Haynes as well as Mr. Ron Grant joins you for today's dose of 284 News. Until then, have a beautiful afternoon. Bye-bye.